This country has changed, and we have to make sure that that change is reflected in the media and promoted in the media.
I think it really has revitalised this. It's back to adrenaline pumping, new thinking days.
That something has changed in Scottish society. There's an awful lot of people in Scotland who found their voices politically.
People now are just so engaged in the debate, and they want to find information. The people who did feel that they might lean towards independence, the people who had that kind of point of view, felt that they weren't given a voice by the mainstream media. They felt that their opinions just weren't reflected.
I think social media has influenced the debate massively from the yes perspective, certainly. It's been the default media source for the yes side.
Yes.
No.
No. Yes.
No. Maybe aye, maybe no.
Yes.
Maybe aye, maybe no.
The eyes of the world have been on Scotland while people decided how they were going to vote in the Scottish Independence Referendum. Every industry has been under the spotlight, and it's been the job of Scotland's media, its biggest ever task, to make sure that voters are informed. We're here in Scotland to ask editors and voters if the media has been up to the task. But we also speak to the editors behind the rise of Scotland's new media, the websites that have been funded by the public themselves to the tune of hundreds of thousands of pounds, to find out why the editors say they must rebalance the political tilt in Scotland's media.
The disappointing reaction from the Scottish media for me is that there's only one paper, that is us, in favour of the Yes campaign. I just don't understand why there's only us see independence as a viable option when so many people from all sections of society in Scotland are absolutely passionate about supporting it. Because of what I would describe as a democratic deficit, because there have not been newspapers and the mainstream media which support independence, then there's a vacuum there, and websites such as Bella Caledonia and Wings Over Scotland have stepped into that vacuum.
The Scottish media, certainly large parts of it, have missed a golden opportunity. It's not a surprise that a lot of the papers are going for no, because our biggest titles are owned by people based in England or multinational interests overseas.
So if, as some would argue, the Scottish media hasn't quite risen to the challenge and has missed a golden opportunity, who has stepped in to grab it? We asked the voters.
Well, we get our information from Bella Caledonia, Wings Over Scotland, Newsnet Scotland.
Yeah. The fact that there's been so little from the mainstream traditional press that's been pro-independence has meant that there's this massive void been opened, and of course so many people are now online that the online media has filled that void.
When I started doing this in April full-time on Facebook, I had 60 Facebook friends. This morning I've got 1,300 and something, and we are all yesers. We are all connecting with each other, we all know each other.
There's Labour for Independence, there's National Collective website, there's Business for Scotland website, obviously the political parties themselves, the SNP, Scottish Green Party, there's Newsnet Scotland, there's Wings Over Scotland. There are a plethora of websites that you can go to for this information.
The one I've been looking at prior to coming up here was Wings Over Scotland, which is, I'm on Facebook quite a lot, so that gets put about on Facebook and I get the link.
And the National Collective, Wings Over Scotland.
No, I don't mind the no side, if there's much right to put their case as a yes side. We should be getting equal coverage, but that's quite simply not happening in this referendum.
All the channels, the BBC and the RT and even Al Jazeera, all the channels seem to be covering it because it's such an important issue.
Most of the things that I'm seeing are all on news channels. I don't really read the paper because I just don't have time for it to pick it up, so anything that's kind of flashed in front of my face.
I watch Sky News, ITN, BBC One, watch them all.
One of the biggest players in the new media scene has been Wings Over Scotland, a website created by the Reverend Stuart Campbell, which in the months leading up to the independence referendum was pulling in more than 200,000 unique users a month. The site has raised more than £200,000 with the vast majority of that money coming from the public themselves through crowdsourcing. Some of that money has gone to fund the Wee Blue Book, a little book of Scottish independence facts that has been distributed throughout Scotland by a team of volunteers. We spoke to the Reverend Stuart Campbell to find out more about the Wee Blue Book and about Wings Over Scotland.
Well, I think there's been such a big demand for websites like Wings Over Scotland for the obvious reason, which is that you've got the views of roughly half the population of Scotland just not being represented anywhere in the media. There is not a single daily newspaper, not a national newspaper, not a big circulation newspaper, as we speak certainly, that is prepared to come out for yes. The crowdfunding is what funds Wings. We don't take any advertising or anything. I did the site for about 1.25 years as just a hobby, really. And eventually it was taking up so much of my time that I didn't have time to earn a living otherwise. It became a professional job at that point. Then after that, the fundraiser started becoming insanely successful. We would do a fundraiser to have an opinion poll, and we'd clear the target in, you know, half a day or something. And with something like a website, especially when it's an openly partisan website, then there are people who just won't come to it, who wouldn't look at it even if they knew about it, because they'd go, oh no, I don't want to read some of these yes loons or whatever. So the idea of doing the Wee Blue Book was to have something that people could just give to their mum or their granny or their neighbour or their workmate, and just give them the arguments condensed into a small, easily digestible form. They wouldn't have to go and look for it. You could just put it right in front of people. The feedback for the Wee Blue Book's been absolutely phenomenal. I mean, I get bombarded with emails and messages of all kinds of things. People saying, I never ever thought my mum would be a yes, and I gave her the Wee Blue Book, and now she's out leafleting with me. It's been just absolutely, it's exceeded our wildest expectations.
The popularity of the new media has become undeniable, but what has driven that? We spoke to Mike Small, the editor and founder of Bella Caledonia, set up in 2007 and at its best pulling in more than 500,000 unique users a month, to find out why there's such a demand.
This could have been the Scottish print media's finest day, and they've failed. There's a kind of broken trust between readers and the print media. I think the broadcast media are in a similar position, and the state broadcaster has now regular protests of thousands of people outside their front door complaining about their bias. So that's a really significant moment for our democracy, when people don't trust the media anymore. Whether they feel we're a threat, I don't know. We don't have anything like the resources that they do, but we are honest, authentic and transparent. Andy Coulson's not winking anymore, he's in Belmarsh, and I think that's a signpost for where the mainstream media are. They're in jail.
I feel that the mainstream media have been quite spooked by the websites. I think their reaction to it has been almost disappointing with the spooking. It could have been a partnership. It could have blossomed into something that would have been really good for the media as a whole, and we could have worked together. There could have been a great relationship there, but I think there was a certain amount of, I don't know, distrust almost with us, and unfortunately that hasn't happened.
So if the popularity of new media websites has rocketed throughout the debate, why hasn't there been a better relationship with the mainstream media?
Largely online services are unregulated. They can take a point of view that's partisan. That's quite a different proposition from traditional media, and I think against that background, actually the credentials of impartial media, public services like STV, like BBC and so on, are reinforced as being at the heart of the debate. We have to have, from a regulator perspective, no opinion, and we have to be unbiased and give both sides a fair chance, and that's what we do, and that's not the same for online services which aren't licensed. Certainly there have been new websites, and that is part of the new environment that we find ourselves. I don't think they alter very much what we do. We know the role that we have, we know who our readers are, we know we're attracting more people online. So I don't think we tailor what we do with a view to that as competition. I think that we just get on and do what we do, and hope that it works.
One thing's for sure throughout this debate, social media has played a huge part. But between the mainstream media and the new media, how have both sides fared?
yes campaigners, no campaigners, they've all managed to not just get involved with their own opinions, but sort of fact checking and, you know, counter-arguing points that are made in the mainstream media or near as well. And I think it's been a real grassroots level up to experts who've all found a way to get involved through either Facebook or Twitter or G+ or however it may be. I'm not sure I'd view the emergence of social media on new media websites as being a challenge for the traditional media. I'd say it's probably more of an opportunity. Certainly in the numbers I keep, since April, the mainstream media, social media accounts have all seen a rise of in excess of 200,000 followers across Twitter alone. You know, you could probably imagine what it would be like on other channels also. I think we managed to see mainstream media has become more and more aware of the importance of social media, and rather than viewing it as a bolt-on, they have now started to engage because of the individual websites.
The people of Scotland have made it clear through their online clicks that there is a demand for a different type of media. But what happens after the referendum? What will the future be for those new media websites? And what's in store for the Scottish mainstream media? How can they keep the momentum running?
These sites have grown, have mushroomed very, very quickly, and their readership figures within the course of 3 or 4 years are the equivalent of anything that any of these traditional titles could only have dreamed of. And so it's natural that they would feel threatened, because they look at these and think, well, if they keep growing exponentially, then do we diminish? And if you've got a website like Wings Over Scotland, which can generate crowdfunding in substantial six-figure sums over the course of a few weeks, then you wonder if there were several people doing it, if they did it as a major business plan, then that's a going concern. There's been so much momentum built, not just in our trade, in journalism, but throughout society. There's an awful lot of people in Scotland who have found their voices politically, and they will be scrutinised. That then means an extra 20% of the population who want to scrutinise the decisions that are being made on their behalf. That has to be good. If Westminster don't wake up and see that this has been the biggest challenge they have ever faced since 1707, then eventually they will be swamped. I have my doubts as to whether they will heed those lessons.
So we've existed long before this and we'll exist long after it. I think that we need to expand that space that's opened up for new voices to be heard. We'll certainly be continuing after September the 18th, hopefully for as long as we can. I think there's an important role to be played in changing the landscape of media and giving voice to the invisible, the unheard and the disenfranchised.
If we get our yes vote, then that's just the very, very start of things. That's when the hard work begins, because so many people are looking to build this new, fairer, more equal, more prosperous Scotland and more democratic, and we want rid of nuclear weapons. So I think websites like Newsnet Scotland have got a really important part to play to make sure that that happens. If it's a no, then we still have to go about changing the way that we run our society. We still have to put pressure on people so that the gap between rich and poor doesn't get any bigger. The pressure still needs to be there, and there's still a job to do for websites such as Newsnet.
We've had to look at some of the things we think, some of the role that we take, get more in touch with our readers probably, be open to more spectrum of opinion, a broader spectrum of opinion. I think it really has revitalised us. It's back to adrenaline pumping, new thinking days.
I think it's a good question how this momentum and this engagement can be maintained. I think it's definitely in the media's best interest to do that. I mean, everywhere you go, people are becoming engaged with this conversation, and it's absolutely brilliant. It's energising the country. I've never felt the country so excited. If the country has woken up to the fact that things don't need to be that way, things don't need to be as bad as that, we don't need to settle for rubbish, that is a huge, whatever the result of the vote, that is a gift. that this referendum campaign has given us, and we should seize it as newspaper editors. We should seize that with both hands and make sure that that is a message we give to our readers, and we engage them in where this country goes in future. This country has changed, and we have to make sure that that change is reflected in the media and promoted in the media.
The microphone ready for anybody who wants to speak? Any speakers out there?